I'm going to try this again. I have a new tablet, a Samsung tablet, and I'm trying to, use this now for my videos. And the first time I tried to upload it, it was actually truncated, so I'll try this again. Today this is Kittens and Keeps, and I've got a new game for you. Well, it's not new, but it's new to me. It's called Itras By, which is Norwegian and means city of Itra. It was published early in the noughties. This is the English translation, published by Vagrant Workshop. You can buy it online. That's what I did. You can go to RPG Stuff, drivethrugstuff.com, and they have the PDF and different versions of the printed book. So I got the hardcover one. It clocks in at roughly 230 pages. And it's a role-playing game that is very much based on storytelling. In fact, you don't have any dice rolling in this game. There are no dice for the game. The way you determine the outcomes of situations is actually through drawing cards. So for example, imagine that the character wants to get from A to B. And in order to do so, he tries to hotwire a car. Then, in order to determine is he successful or not, you draw a card. And you could either have a failure, so it doesn't work, or a success. So he hotwires the car and he can drive from A to B. Or it can be something like a success, but the outcome is completely different than had been anticipated. So in this example, what could happen is, and then you have to story tell this outcome. So it doesn't tell you what really happens, but you have to make this up as you go along, which is very interesting and very nice to play. So for example, in this particular instance, you're trying to hotwire a car, you draw the card, yes, you are successful, but the outcome is different from what had been anticipated. Then you would have to narrate the story. So one way of narrating this would be to say, okay, what were you trying to achieve? You were trying to achieve to get from A to B. So instead of managing to hotwire the car, which would then enable you to drive to B, what happens is, while you're hotwiring the car, a portal opens and you pass through it and you suddenly appear in your destination location. But without the car, you didn't hotwire it, something entirely different made it happen for you. So a very interesting mechanic. The story itself is set in the city of Itra, which was founded by the goddess Itra, who has in the meantime vanished. When you read the book, you find out that she actually has been for some reason sequestered behind a gate that is guarded by unspeakable demons. The city is populated by human beings, by talking apes, by lions. There are monsters of no particular description. You can make them up as you go along in the catacombs beneath the city. There is Nindra, who is a spider goddess or spider woman who took over after her mistress Itra vanished. She's now sitting in something called the Moon Tower, which dominates the city, and she is influential, but she's not constantly trying to change the fate of the city. You have different families there, you have different districts. There's a red light district, there's an artisans district, there's a district that is full of cafes where the artists will meet. In the catacombs there is the so-called god of the machine, who used to be an artisan who was making machines and who's probably godlike, it's not clear, but who at some point lost all of his artistic ability and his inspiration. So he can still build things, but he cannot make new things. He cannot conceive of new things. So in order for him to build new stuff, he needs to suck inspiration out of the people in the city. There is a very nice underground and the idea is that when you get on the train, you encounter different atmospheres, and one atmosphere that's described in the book is the journey, a very long journey of a whole day, and you know how the hours drag on, and it's just very tiring, and you feel like you can't even start to say, are we there yet, because you're so tired out by the travel. The setting is based on the 20s in Western Europe, although of course it's a fantastical setting. Reading the book, it reminded me in some areas of books like Momo by Michael Ende. There is one instance, the so-called Churchillians. Those are portly men who probably look like Winston Churchill, hence the name, who are constantly smoking cigars, and they make those cigars from, I think, the moonbeams. I would have to read it up again, but basically this very much reminds me of the grey gentleman in Michael Ende's Momo, who smoke people's dreams. And as these Churchillians smoke, the smoke actually, when you inhale it, it broadens your horizon, it inspires you. So it's a very interesting idea. This idea of the city as a living thing which changes. There is something called cancer that can affect buildings, and then they start changing. Reminded me of the game Don't Rest Your Head, where you also have this different city that people who have awakened move to, and where they can, you know, where a lot of the stories are set. It also reminds me, from the storytelling aspect of how the story evolves, it reminds me of the slasher flick RPG that I was talking about in an earlier episode of this podcast, or video log rather. And I have come across this, maybe I should explain how I found this, because I was listening to an actual role-playing podcast where they used this system, but the setting was Night Vale, which is I guess it's a fictitious podcast about a fictitious town called Night Vale, somewhere in the desert, somewhere in the United States. And the guys from actual role-playing podcast created a setting around this, and it was actually quite a nice episode to listen to. I can really recommend it, and it gave me an idea of how the game would play, and I believe it's actually a really, really nice system. This, you know, drawing of cards and then trying to explain what those cards actually mean when the results kick in. And I like the setting of Itras By because it's, in a way, fantastical. It reminds me sometimes of Jules Verne in some respects, and it's an open setting. In the book, they tell you, well, you know, read the chapter on Itras By, but you know, if you don't like certain aspects, just cross them out. You know, don't go with what we have decided you should be playing. You know, this is how we see Itras By, but you know, we've only seen a couple of streets and a couple of places in the catacombs. We've seen the harbor, but that doesn't mean we've seen everything, you know. So they actively encourage you to take the city, to change the setting, to come up with new ideas. Also asking yourself, okay, so who else would be there? You know, there are some characters described in this book that you would encounter, and it's just, I guess it's just a quaint setting, quaint in the sense of the English word quaint. You know, it's you could go there and have tea with somebody who is a human being with a musk ox head, who's terribly in love with, and he's one of the oldest family, a member of the oldest family, and he makes a lot of money, you know, but he was, you know, for some reason he's got a musk ox's head, and none of his family are musk ox, and he just looks like that. You know, it's just where you go, okay, that's strange. It's like entering a very strange painting, you know, surrealistic painting. So I believe if you are interested, if you have a group of, let's say, 3 to 4 people, and I would say you're looking at adult players here, because I think for kids it's too freeform, it's too improvisation, and they would probably be overwhelmed by the fact that you create the story as you go along. I think it's quite difficult to actually script a story for this, beyond the mere setting and saying, well, you know, there's 5 people and this is the situation that you find yourselves in, so off you go. If you like improvisation, if you are not addicted to dice, if you are willing to try out something that is different, and if you are happy to create the world as you go along. I mean, this is fantasy in terms of using your imagination to add to the fantasy setting. It's not a fantasy, high fantasy setting in itself. Then I think this game is for you. It retails, I think, at $18. I think I paid I paid 18 euros for this plus shipping. I really like the artwork. As I said, this is quaint art, this is quirky, this is weird, like in the Weird Tales, you know. So if you like Lovecraft, you could find some things in there. I'm more talking about the Dreamland cycle, possibly more so than the Cthulhu cycle. So Dreamland cycle friends would probably be able to relate to this. I can actually imagine that you could play a Dreamlands campaign using the cards method. I think this would work. This would work quite well. And I would also say, you know, use a small group, 3 to 4 people. I think if you have more, then it's going to get really difficult to keep everybody in the story, and to keep them interested and to keep the story going. So this is my 2 cents. I like the one thing that I have to say, and this is a big caveat, I haven't played this game. I've only heard it played, and to me it sounded very intriguing, and I had to buy the book. I like the book. I think it's a great setting. I think the idea is great. So if you have the right group to play this, check this out. You can also download the PDF. I think it retails at €5 or something. And you get the cards as well. You can download the cards for free, basically, or you can cut up your lovely book, which I wouldn't recommend. Yeah, and maybe this is a game for you, so enjoy, and hopefully I'll be able to upload this video and upload it completely. Bye!